This is the F3 Sydney Ferry service to Parramatta or Parramatta River, also called the River Service. Um, this is by far the longest service, ferry service in terms of time for Sydney ferries. It's probably around a 3 hour, 4 hour round trip, depending on how many stops you would want to make. Uh, and this is just the first stop, which is from Circular Quay to Barangaroo. If you have all day to spend in Sydney, I can recommend this river service just because there are so many things to see. It has so many stops, and you actually see less of the touristic side of Sydney, but more the working side, and where Sydney siders actually live, because most Sydney siders live west of the bridge. So um, over half, maybe even three quarters, live west of the bridge. So if you go and take this river service, you will actually see more Sydney siders and commuters taking this as opposed to tourists just going on a day trip on the Sydney ferry. So just departing the wharf, and I'm on the starboard side, and uh, for me, what caught my eye were the Manly ferry service. So, for the first half of this trip, you will see that I'm watching these two ferries depart the quay. So that's what caught my eye. But we now leave the quay, and as you just saw, the MCA is on the western side, and on the eastern side is the house. So I managed to capture three ferry boats, three yellow and green. Oh, four. Oh, they're so cute. I do like these yellow and green liveried boats that we have. It's so very Sydney. Sure, it might look gaudy, but yellow and green, what a colour scheme. The Sydney Opera House sits on Bennelong Point. So it's at the end of of Bennelong Point. And this is important because the stop that we're going to is called Barangaroo Point. So Bennelong was an Aboriginal tribal warrior with first contact with the first governor of Sydney, Arthur Phillip, and Barangaroo is his wife. So in this sense, Bennelong and Barangaroo are kind of like the bookends of the icons of the harbour. So Bennelong Point used to be a tram storage area, or where the trams that used to run in Sydney before the new ones. They hosted the tram shed there. But there you go, the fickleness of public transport. Now we are investing in a lot of trams, and a lot of taxpayers' money is just recreating something that we should probably have never gotten rid of. But here you go. I was watching the Manly Ferry service as we departed the quay. So there you go. They head off east as we head off west. And there's Garden Island in the distance. So as mentioned, this is a ferry trip where if you have a lot of time, so if you're just getting over the jet lag, get your vitamin D and just sit on board and just watch the world go by and think, what are you doing at the other side of the world? Oh, the weather is so different. Anyway, this is a nice ferry ride, as I've mentioned. But you do need to allow some time for it. Now, there's Kirribilli again. You can't really miss the suburb of Kirribilli. And I had a look, and it's actually called a good fishing spot, which kind of makes sense. And now we just go under the 1930s Sydney Harbour Bridge. And so it's a feat of engineering. It's just lovely. The crosshatch, the lattice work, the metal lattice work, and this curve off the bridge reminds me a bit of Craig Cossington Smith's iconic Impressionist painting of the curve of the bridge, which is at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, if you are interested to see. So just passing now Milsons Point Wharf and Luna Park, and here is Lavender Bay, another favoured spot of artists. So there's lots to see here. Blues Point Tower, which is the brutalist style, which is awful to look at, but now an icon. And just ahead is Goat Island or Meemel. So we've had Clark and Shark Islands on the eastern side of the bridge, and now we've got Goat Island here. Looking out there now is Balmain. So it's on a different ferry service as well, but I will take that ferry service and upload it one day. And up ahead is that structure, which is another bridge, and it is actually called Anzac Bridge. Now, Anzac Bridge, it was also called Madonna's iconic twin points, just because it did look like it. But now we are passing Barangaroo Reserve. So, as I said, Bennelong at the house and Barangaroo here. So this reserve is rather long and lengthy. It runs alongside. It used to be the port, and this was public land. This is public land. However, where the southern end is, where Crown Casino now lies, it's that cigar-looking building that looks like the Gherkin in London, except it's bigger. That was part of public land, and there's been a bit of controversy because it's waterfront, and there is so much greed and avarice in the city that they just claimed it, or they wanted it. So there is a bit of a regret, because this could have been our Royal Botanic Gardens on the western side of the bridge, but we have this instead, and it does get crowded, as you may see during my Vivid videos. So it could have been better, but look, it is where it is now. So this is Narwee Cove, and Narwee means bark canoes, and in the far distance is actually where the new metro station is, Barangaroo Metro Rail, and they still continue to build structures here, and these could have been parklands, but I suspect they're going to be office buildings or apartment buildings now, but who knows. It is public land, and the thing about Sydney is we've always made room for the public and for the citizens of the city to enjoy such wonderful views. Anyway, so this is Crown Casino. It is a controversial casino. There's been a lot of corruption, money laundering involved in this. A lot of unsavory practices have occurred. So it is rather regretful, but you can't miss it. So there have also been workers' deaths when this was built. So this edifice, this structure, this monument to the industry symbolizes a lot of not so nice things about this side of Sydney. But nevertheless, we are slowing down here now to get to Barangaroo Wharves. That passing ferry is a Call Your Ferry service. I think it actually goes to the Sydney Fish Markets, but I've never taken it. Maybe I'll take it one day. So these are just the apartments. So you can definitely see the more modern side of Sydney of the last 10, 20 years as opposed to the eastern side. And the ferry wharves are massive just because there's a lot of people that take the services from here. So here we are, the massive Barangaroo ferry wharf, and there's two of them. And as they say, they'll need to build more. And along this as well would be King Street Wharf, where the commercial cruises are moored.